Welcome to Bereavement and Joy. We're so glad you are here. The purpose of this podcast is to facilitate a way for God to meet you where you are, whether stuck in bed, unable to get up, robotically going through life, or maybe you're further along in the journey and grief has become your companion. God has a special message for your heart. In today's podcast, we're going to be doing things a little different today, something a little special. We are going to have a special guest for the first time on the podcast. But before I introduce who that's going to be, let's start out with reading our scripture for today, which is going to be Proverbs 19:21. And it says, "Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand." If you've been listening to this podcast, you know that my son BJ was an organ donor. And it is today, September the 15th of 2025, as this episode is dropping, that it is the 3-year anniversary of BJ's heart becoming a miracle for another family. And God made a connection between us and that family. A family in Louisiana colliding with a family in Florida in a way that we could never have anticipated in our wildest dreams. And I thought no better way to depict the essence of bereavement and joy than the sharing of this story of God's sovereign plan. So our guest today is going to be the heart recipient, Ricky Boudreau, and his wife, Madeline. So without any further ado, let me turn the stage over to them.
Hi, my name is Ricky Boudreau. I'm 68 years old. I'm from Rain, Louisiana. And I received this beautiful heart from BJ in 2022.
And my name is Madeline Boudreau, and I am Ricky's wife. And we were invited to come here to share a little bit about our end of the transplant story and the heart donation. And so I'm going to let Ricky start with kind of like where he began in his health and why he needed a heart transplant.
Yeah, and back in 2016, I ended up going to the hospital. I had some swelling and stuff going on, and I'm like, okay, I need to get this checked out. So I went to Lafayette Hospital, and they kept me there about a week and said, look, we need to send you to New Orleans. So I went to New Orleans, stayed there, and they ended up stenting my heart. They told me when I left that I'd probably be about 6 more years, that I was in congestive heart failure, but I would need to make a decision at that time of what I needed to do.
Right, so basically your health was compromised, and they gave you a temporary fix by giving you a stent, which they knew would not last.
Right, that is correct.
And that your condition was so severe that inevitably one day you would need a heart transplant.
That is correct. So back in, I want to say 2018, I ended up having a heart attack. And they ended up putting a pacemaker defibrillator in me. And that kind of got me by for a little while longer till it came time where New Orleans said, you know, we have some issues. Your blood's not doing too good. Your heart's not doing too good. And we need you to come over here. So they started running tests and everything, trying to find out what was definitely going on. Well, they verified again that I did have congestive heart failure and that I would definitely need a heart transplant.
Right, and so the hospital we were referred to was in New Orleans, and we live about 3 hours away from that hospital. So we knew that once he was up for the transplant, we would basically have to live at the hospital, which is exactly what happened. And he was hospitalized in July the first time.
July
correct?
the first time for a week.
Yeah,
That's
for
correct.
a week. And they implanted a pump into his leg, through his leg to his heart, to keep his heart pumping. But that didn't work out because of platelet counts and all. And we were actually sent home with a machine IV backpack,
PICC line.
that was the medicine was going to pump his heart until the numbers leveled off and they would have him back at the hospital. So then when did you go back to
So I, during that period, they would do blood work and stuff. And so on August 23rd, they, after my blood work, they called and said, okay, y'all need to come now. You need to come to the hospital in New Orleans. Stay. You can be prepared to stay because it could take a while before you can get a heart. That yes, we're going to put you on the heart transplant list. So I went to New Orleans, at Oxnard's in New Orleans, and they brought me in, did some more blood work, put another thing in my leg, another pump in my leg, and we kept that for a little while, and that didn't work. So we went to what they call an impeller, put that in, and it got me higher up on the transplant list is where I needed to be. So at one point in early September, it brought me up to a stage 4 and then on to a stage 2, which is like critical. You need a heart now.
Right. So all this time, we were away from our family, and I was living in a little section of the ICU room, and we just managed. We managed every day. When he was on the leg pump, he was not able to move at all in the hospital. And he knew the severity of his plight. He knew that without a heart transplant, that he would not survive. He would only have a limited amount of time left. So it was a very challenging time. And as we went through those days, it was so routine. There were so many machines hooked up. There was such trauma. We held tight and close to God, praying about the situation, hoping that he would be blessed with a heart. But in that daily, we would talk about the fact that for that to happen, someone would die. And that was like, there was this emotion of, oh my gosh, we can't wait. We pray we get a heart, but oh my God, someone will die. And so that was emotionally hard to deal with. And there were days you really got severely emotional about that, knowing that was to come.
Yes, I did. Many a days it was like, man, that's all I thought about. It would stay on my mind constantly. And at some point, it was like, okay, God, it's not in my hands anymore. It's in your hands. Let me give myself fully to you at this point, and you know my needs, our needs, and we give it all up to you.
And there were days very close to the actual date that he got his heart, where his life was hanging by a thread, where he had episodes in the cardiac ICU that were very near death, where his heart would react to the wiring of all the machines, and it was quite scary. And so it became a lot of anxiety waiting. But then also what I noticed about Ricky was that he also, after these episodes would happen, he became much more at peace, at ease with what was to happen, with so much trust in God, knowing that either way, whether he got the heart or not, he was going to be in good hands and God would be at the forefront. So he was prepared. He was prepared to receive a heart, and he was prepared to meet Jesus. And so that was beautiful. It was very hard to watch, but I was such in admiration of his faith and his trust in God. And so let's talk about when we did get the call.
We got the call in early, mid-September. We were, I guess, sleeping, and the phone rang, and neither one of us got up to answer it. And a nurse came in and she said, "Hey, y'all need to answer the phone. They're trying to get in touch with you." But she couldn't tell us what was going on. So the phone rang again, and it was my transplant coordinator letting us know that, "Hey, we found a beautiful heart for you. Call your family, and here in the next day or so, you will get a heart transplant, a beautiful heart transplant." So
Yeah, I remember, we have, just to go back, we actually have 8 children, and they were, of course, on pins and needles, concerned the whole time waiting for the heart. And of course, that phone call happened at 11:17, and so I immediately, we didn't know how long the process would take. We didn't know if it was going to happen immediately the next day. We didn't understand even how it transpired and how it happened, how it unfolds. And so I called and texted every one of my children, and all of them did not answer the call throughout the night till finally one of them saw it. And eventually they were all available to talk, and then most of them were able to come and meet us at the hospital the next day. And so that whole next day was a lot of preparation, a lot of medicine changes,
anxiety,
a lot of anxiety.
It
was a long day.
Yeah, it was.
And
then they came.
It was that following day. All through that day to the night into the next morning, they came into the room at about 1:30 in the morning and said, we're going to take you now. We're going to get you prepared. And I immediately thought that the heart was in the hospital. And that one of the nurses, they might have slipped up because, with the LOPA, which is the Organization for Procurement of Organs, it's a very, guarded process. There's not a lot of information that gets handed to you, especially about your donor in the beginning. And so one of them might have slipped up and said, "Well, the doctor's on the way to Orlando to pick up your heart now." And it was amazing to me that was the process, and that was 1:30 in the morning. And she said, "My recommendation to you and your family would be to go and get some rest. We're going to be preparing him all night, and I will text you the minute we start the surgery." And that was at 5-something in the morning.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So I said, "So the heart is not here." She's like, "No, ma'am, we have to go get it. The doctor has to inspect it and make sure that it is compatible and put their eyes on it to make sure this heart is perfect for you." And one of the blessings for Ricky's situation was that the doctor always told us that because of his blood type and because of his body type, his average weight and
my age,
he would be more likely to receive a heart more quickly. And so in fact he did. And that next morning, so 1:30, they took him. 5:30 they started the surgery, and we all went into the waiting area, and the heart surgeon came out at 9-something in the morning and said everything went well. The heart is doing great. His heart is functioning wonderfully, and now you can go see him. And that was amazing.
So I don't remember the day they came to see me, but the following day was Madeline's birthday. And she'd heard things from another friend of ours who had a heart transplant about a month before that, "Hey, when he comes out, he's going to be talking crazy. You don't know what he's going to be saying."
Yeah, her husband had adverse side effects from all of the pain medication, and he literally was talking out of his mind and didn't understand anything. So I was basically expecting that. And when I walked in on September 16th, the next day, he said, "Happy birthday."
"Happy birthday." And she looked at me with this
wow.
look "What did you just say?" I said, "Happy birthday."
So we were amazed. I was so grateful. We just praised God so much that day. It was such a miracle. So we didn't know anything about the heart donor at that point, except that now we knew it was from Orlando. The heart was from Orlando. And so the nurse on duty that morning came in, and he was doing all his vitals, and he took a listen with his stethoscope to Ricky's heart, and he said, "Man, that thing's beating like a drum. And then after he said that, he offered for Ricky to listen for the very first time to his new heart beating in his chest. And and then he allowed me to. And so I happened to be very active on social media. And so I created a video of that particular scenario and of him listening to the heart and him saying, man, that thing's beating like a drum. And then, we had no idea that it had any significance at that point. So after the transplant, his recovery went fairly smooth, and we had to live in an apartment very near the hospital for a few weeks in his recovery, so that if anything happened, he would be close to the hospital. And so while we were there, the LOPA representative had given us instructions on how to create a letter to the family of the donor. And so we sat one night and we wrote a letter expressing our gratitude and how our prayers were answered, and that we were praying
for the donor's
family. And we told them about our life, our children, our grandchildren, and we sent the letter off. We gave it to the LOPA representative, to the nurse, and she handed it off. And that was it. That was our communication.
Yeah, we hadn't heard anything back for
that was in October.
Right, and we finally got the letters from the family.
In February.
In February. And we read it basically live because we wanted to see...
we wanted to share it.
Yeah.
I had a very large TikTok following, and people had been following his story, and so this was such an integrative part of the story that we wanted to include our live reaction to reading the letter. So we got a group of letters in an envelope from the donor's family, which happened to turn out to be BJ's family, and we read it live, and it was just so touching. And that is when we found, now somebody's getting teary-eyed now. That is when we found out how old BJ was, that he had a family, that he had 2 small children, that he had a beautiful wife, that he had parents and grandparents that loved him, and that he was on his way to church when he was involved in a terrible accident, and that he played drums in the church music ministry.
That was the first sign.
That was the first sign. We also learned that, our children call Ricky Happy as the grandpa name, and BJ's kids called their great-grandpa Happy Pappy. BJ's name is Brian. Our son's name is Brian. Ricky's
My middle name is Brian, spelled the same way. And BJ, Brian Joseph. My grandpa's middle name was Joseph. There's so many things that just... came together.
It was like magical. And so we posted that video
on Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day. It was Valentine's Day because of the heart, and it was our heart story. And that was it. And we kept posting about his recovery, and somebody that knew BJ's family saw that video and told BJ's family, oh my gosh, I just came across the story of BJ's heart donation, and it was all God.
Oh, definitely.
Because the LOPA process would have taken a lot longer for us to finally connect. And through that live video, God just orchestrated the right people to see it. Of all the millions of people in the world that would have watched this video, someone actually knew BJ's family.
Right.
And so that was how we created our connection. And we have not yet met in person, but we have collaborated very much through text and messages. And how honored are you to be a part of this podcast about bereavement and joy? When
Tracy called and talked to us about it, and Madeline, I think she talked to you,
mm-hmm.
And she said, would y'all be interested in doing this? The minute Madeline asked me, I looked at her, I'm like, yes, we're going to do this podcast. We're going to tell our side of the story,
right.
for sure.
And there was the very first year that we celebrated his heart anniversary, I asked BJ's parents to participate by sending a video to him on that, so we could show him on the day of that heart celebration. And BJ's dad said some beautiful things, because I had confided in them that Ricky had carried a lot of guilt about the fact that BJ passed away and now he gets to live. And it was pretty intense. You felt that.
Oh yeah.
Every day.
Every day.
And BJ's dad in that video comforted you and said,
right.
Please do not feel that way.
Right. He got to go to heaven to meet Jesus, but he basically, you've got other things to do here on earth.
Yeah, and so what a blessing that was to relieve Ricky's burden of that guilt that he was feeling and carry on with a complete positive outlook. And so I love that Tracy named her podcast Bereavement and Joy, because there's always a combination in life with trauma and stress and grief, and then good and wonderful things too. And so the bereavement part that BJ's family has to endure is part of the story, as well as the joy we get to have BJ's heart and carry it on and have it continue to live inside another beautiful person. My husband is a beautiful person.
Well, I got a beautiful heart. There's no
you
doubt.
got a beautiful heart. Yeah.
There's no doubt.
A lot of tears. Mm-hmm.
So, I can't talk right now.
So, a heart full to be able to sit here and share this conversation, and we hope that it is everything that Tracy had intended to hear. Once again, we are so blessed and extremely grateful. And we pray to one day meet BJ's family whenever it is the right time. But for now, we are so grateful and pleased to be a part of this podcast and this journey with Tracy.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricky and Madeline, for your story. It is going to touch so many people's hearts. And I am so grateful that you are willing to come and share that with us today. You know, there were so many fingerprints of God scattered throughout your story. The thing that stands out the most to me is the male connections that are found in this story. So as Ricky had shared, his middle name is Brian, which is my husband's name. Obviously, BJ's first name, Brian Joseph. But also, Ricky's real name is Richard. And that is the name of my dad, who died of cancer 8 years ago. BJ had a son, and his name is Colton. Ricky and Madeline have a grandson named Colton. My brother, Joe, whose legal name is Richard Joseph, his birthday is September 15th, the day that the heart recipient received his transplant. And I can't pretend to understand what this is supposed to mean, what message God is trying to give. I often think sometimes it's just him yelling loudly so that through the pain and the hurt, I can hear, see, and feel his presence. And I don't begin to understand the whys of God's decisions, but I trust in his sovereignty. And as the scripture today said, many are the plans in the minds of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. I hope you have been blessed by today's podcast. That story was amazing of how God orchestrated through everything, and his hands were on it. I hope it has encouraged you. I hope it has touched your heart. I would love to hear from you. You can email me at tracy@bereavementjoy.org. And if this episode was an encouragement to you, I would appreciate if you would like and share. Maybe give a 5-star rating out there as well, so that we can get the message out to as many people as possible. Until next time.